The intent is to use them most often, for instance, locating lost people, whether they, we've had instances where a child with autism, an adult with dementia, those kind of things, where, and in many instances where time is of the essence to locate those people, it certainly gives us a lot more effectiveness in doing that. It can also be used for other things in terms of critical incidents, overseeing a scene, natural disasters, those kind of things, when you need an aerial view or a larger scope as to what a circumstance is. In terms of either surveying a particular area for public safety, closing places off, or creating perimeters, making sure people are safe and there's no problem with crowd control, those kind of things. So we anticipate it be used under those circumstances, but advantages it has, one is the infrared that would allow them to be effective at night when they be most effective, because that's obviously when we're the most limited. Would not have the weapons, as we talked about, would not be used for surveillance or other enforcement purposes. It would be used for the public safety aspect.
What about if you have a bad guy who's on the run, he's hiding in some woods or hiding behind some houses? Would you anticipate maybe bringing one of these in, something like that, or would you be afraid to shoot it out of the sky? There goes your program.
Yeah, well, that's if that's the case, that's a pretty cheap, in the long run, pretty cheap way to locate someone. But yeah, it would be used. That's one of those immediate public safety threats that would not only keep officers safer, but the public safer. Obviously, if we could deal with those, if somebody's shooting at a drone, I'd much rather have that any day than shooting at an officer or shooting at somebody else in public. So.
How high does a drone need to be in order to have a good visual, picture of what's going on? I mean, is it get up a couple hundred feet, or does it have to be about 30 feet, 50 feet? What?
Well, it really depends on that.
I mean, if you got a drone up there a couple hundred feet, and if a guy can pick it off, he's a pretty good shot.
I think the use is really, really determined on circumstance as far as, what are you trying to accomplish with it. Just locating somebody, obviously the larger field of view that you have, the more effective you'll be. If it's a situation like you described, well, obviously getting a lot closer so you can make out some detail about, is the person armed, not armed, is it safe to approach or not. Those are really dependent on the specific circumstances, is how that would be deployed. They can't go too high, number one, because they lose effectiveness. You lose your actual, the visual acuity, but you also there's some regulations.
Is it 400 feet? Is that their height?
As one I'd have to ask Ray, but it's something like that.
Because there could be an airplane in the area,
right, and
helicopter or something.
That's the concern. You don't want them to get in a flight path anywhere.
Yeah.
Of course, you don't want to create more hazards when you're trying to resolve others. So.
Now, would this have the capability of recording video?
Yes.
Because then would your data policy apply to this too? The same thing as body cameras? Same policy, or what are you thinking?
It'd be certainly a parallel policy. If we wouldn't use them as I said, for surveillance or those kind of things. So it would be video of an actual incident. Yes, it does record and store that data. The data retention, although there's not a separate data retention law regarding aerial footage, it would be covered under the Government Data Practices Act, which would make it consistent with the body camera.
And that's because this is something your department is using, and I would think even though it's a different kind of a camera, it's still recording stuff. Right.
But you'd also have to look at the video to do your report on that, whereas on your body cams, there's still discussion whether you can look at the video while writing up your report.
Yeah, there's still discussion. I think the law is pretty clear on that issue unless the officer is being investigated for potential criminal violation, the critical incident, police officer involved shooting thing. Then it's covered under a different section of data practices, which means that it's actually evidence, and of course it's protected confidential data under that. So it would be the same in the case of a drone, that if it was recording evidence that could potentially, of that critical incident, it would be evidence investigated by another agency and up to them to determine who could see it and when.
Yeah.
If it's evidence, if it's that case of the lost person or, those kind of things, so falls under a different section of,
Right.
Data privacy. But from the department's perspective, obviously, we're just trying to be as effective and efficient as we can. Obviously, accuracy is a part of that, so making sure that police reports are accurate is not a bad thing from the standpoint of the video.
All right.